Hello everyone, hope you don't mind my fan still being on. It's hot out here in hell. Best in my Friday best. We are discussing the death of greatest George's former dog, Fontaine. And by my Friday best, nice, decent suit jacket with athletic shirt underneath. A little Yankees Nike fake ass polo. The way we're going to get straight to it. Chapter 19. Fontaine leaves the party. Walking into the year of 2012, the previous veterinarian that looked after Fontaine left the practice. Some young lady bought the practice while the veterinarian that worked with Fontaine retired. Simple checkup and specimen along with his yearly shots were due. She did a blood panel and told me to prepare for the worst. I totally flipped out and said, "What do you mean?" "Fontaine is fine, unless there's something you aren't telling me." She said his enzymes were slightly elevated. I said, "Okay, so what does that mean?" Never got a straight answer, only for her to tell me to prepare for the worst and make sure he is comfortable. This was a cryptic message because Fontaine seemed to his usual self and not knowing what she was talking about. I decided to call his old vet, telling her what she said and what was she talking about to prepare the worst, ? She was also puzzled and baffled at what she was talking about as well. She assured me there were other vets out there that could give me exam on Fontaine. She said that she couldn't do anymore because she was retired. I said if you could please ask her what she meant in the cryptic messages she was saying without being direct in answering my questions. Meanwhile, Fontaine was full of energy and his usual self. I would wrestle with him, and he was just as active and fast as ever in the backyard. Still, not knowing what in the hell she meant, I made an appointment to talk with her one-on-one and abandoned her to tell me what she meant so I could treat anything in advance. Finally, I spoke with her again, and she told me that his blood was thinning out and had trace of the early stages of cancer, and that his blood enzymes were not producing good properties. I said, "How come you couldn't say this to me prior?" I said, "What kind of cancer?" She said it differs in different dogs, but since he was mixed and a big dog was more prevalent. Still talking in riddle and rhymes, still couldn't get her to be more specific since Fontaine was normal and had symptoms. Going into summer months, we had our radio show at Lookin Radio. We had what I thought was a troll ending up to be a person who wanted to do a documentary of me and the show. For communications at first, I wanted to make sure if he was on the up and up, knowing as well throughout this documentary that I had creative interest and there would be no troll involvement or all bets were off the table. Now I know his agenda at first was to include the trolls, but I told him I'm open to doing the documentary and letting him take it to film festivals, but absolutely no troll involvement. Still, he at first was talking at both sides of his mouth until I showed him exactly what those bitches were doing online. And even though he was part of it indirectly and part of the group, he didn't realize the degree of their actions that were being done to harass me until I pointed it out to him. Once he fully understood why I didn't want those bitches part of the documentary, and his buddy who helped him with it then finally understood my reasons why I wanted those bitches not in the documentary. Still, he would try to mention the benefits including them, and I said no. I stuck to my guns, full, steady, and fast, and said no. I said no mention of them. And I have some creative control on how it's done as well. Period. Then finally he called our radio show in August of 2012 and we had a full discussion. Talks were increasing on the matter, but still no full agreement. News came about that old fat-ass redneck neighbor had just bought the farm, and Matt and I celebrated by putting balloons around the mailbox saying congratulations, letting that other bitch neighbor know how we felt about that bitch. Busy with the taxi making money hand over fist, money was coming in. Karen at the Crown Plaza Hotel was giving me airport trips along with other hotels that I paid on the side for their business. With Karen, I gave her free rides for the business she was giving me. Working long hours and dealing with drama, still had an intermediate social life until Ellen got out of jail. I told her I've been through this road before and I don't deal with fake women. You need to clean yourself up and apologize for your behavior before I even consider the possibility of giving you a second chance. Angela would get upset saying she was a whore, and I kind of agreed with her, but told her what she offered on the table since it's been a whole year since she was down in lowercase Virginia. I am growing restless and still looking high and low for a compatible lady friend. Meanwhile, I could tell that Fontaine had lost a lot of weight. So I felt like I needed to get him a new veterinarian to get him looked at and see what was going on with him. I could see him blink his eyes like he was about to flutter his eyes. It looked like he was about ready to have a seizure. I was in a panic space period. I said to myself I was going to take him to the compassionate care unit at the SPCA, and that was a mistake in half. When talking to the coordinator there about his condition of losing weight and his current condition, they were clueless. This so-called compassionate care unit didn't even have blood panels nor needles to draw blood. All they could do was weigh him and check his stool specimen. Finally, I got agitated and asked the doctor where did the donations go throughout the years of good faith to open up this phantom clinic when they didn't even do the basics such as drawing blood from the animal. So pissed off, and then took him to the emergency room to get them to give me a straight answer. Paying close to $1,000, part of which Angela helped with. They took the appropriate procedures and told me that Fontaine developed cancer in his liver and it was going to spread to other places, and unfortunately there wasn't anything I could do because it had spread in the latter stages. It also spread to his brain, where some of his senses were altered. Space period. I was spitting nails. She told me there's a center at the time locally that could treat him for cancer. Space period. He said there was one in D.C. or NC state in Raleigh, North Carolina that could cover his treatment, but once they open him up, he will never be the same. Saying also he had a few mild strokes but did a real good job in hiding his seizures. I brought him back and informed Matt that Fontaine wasn't going to make it for another year. Told him he had cancer. He was just concerned and we were both torn up. I was pissed off on several fronts. I was pissed, not knowing what to do. They told me putting him down was the only valuable decision, but I wasn't going to do it. Any hope of keeping him alive and getting his cancer treated was my concern. S.O. I was going to take him to NC State and get him treated. I asked Angela for help, but she brought up Ellen saying why should she help me when I was messing around with Ellen the jailbird. I told her I wasn't messing with her, but the only difference was at least Ellen was accessible and nearby, and Angela seemed like she didn't want to come back to Virginia but start throwing it up in my face about my involvement with Ellen, when there really wasn't any involvement with Ellen at all. Walking into 2013, Fontaine seemed to be alright improving, but still started to have some more clearer seizures that were mini seizures. The doctor gave me medicine to control the seizures and treatment to reduce the spread of his cancer. Meanwhile, Fontaine lost a total of 40 pounds, almost half of his original weight, now weighing 50 pounds. He started to become more lethargic. I was on the phone talking with Matthew Redacted in Michigan, the guy who would help me convert a lot of my VHS tapes to DVD. He was a major contributor in editing troll videos, especially the ones against that freak of nature, Sean Brennan. Like Beverly LaSalle video, and where Brennan's head blew off. Great reverse trolling against these bitches, giving them a heavy dose of their own medicine. Matthew and I were in the middle of speaking about more upcoming videos he would edit against those bitches. Just then Fontaine yelped really loudly and started shaking uncontrollably. Space period. I told Matthew Redacted I had to go, that Fontaine was having constant seizures. I yelled upstairs for Matt and told him what was going on and asked him to ride with me to the emergency room with me and Fontaine. I wrapped Fontaine in 2 blankets. He was falling off the couch, shaking uncontrollably. Space period. Rushed to the veterinary emergency hospital and looked at Matt and said, "You know what I'm going to have to do, space period." "I don't want to do it, but I'm not sure what else to do, space period." Matt shook his head and said that he loved Fontaine like he was his own. I said yes, Fontaine is like a human being. The doctor took him in to try to give him more medicine for the seizures. He had 16 seizures in a span of 20 minutes. I said I'm not going to do anything tonight. Keep him over for evaluations and see if the medicine works. I left Fontaine there, knowing he wasn't coming back. The following morning, the nurse told me he had more seizures after he administered the Benadryl space period. She again told me that she thinks I should euthanize him. I still didn't want to. I cried my eyes out nonstop and took his death was the hardest out of everyone in my family. I knew I didn't want to be responsible for his death, but knowing he was going to die anyway, I went down and authorized him to be euthanized. I cried my eyes out and kept to myself literally for 2 weeks. I had an accident with a cab that same week, which wasn't my fault, and had a windfall of $20,000 in an accident which was clearly not my fault. Still shaken up after Fontaine was put down, his ashes were cremated in an urn that I paid for and will always be a constant memory of my pooch space period. I tried to raise a campaign for help to get his surgeries and tumors shrunken through GoFundMe. Totally cynical that hardly anyone helped, and I matched money that was donated. Finally feeling that the vet was responsible, I reported her to the veterinary board along with the SPCA for not doing a goddamn thing for my dog. All that money throughout the years could be kept in my pocket for not doing diddly, and having the advancements of donations for them not doing the most simplest surgeries and doing blood panel and giving shots space period. The veterinarian who bought the company was totally clueless and didn't give me a direct answer the year before, being very vague, and could have been able to keep my dog longer a few years by combating the cancer. That same week, Kevin and I had a radio show and spoke about the situation. Very emotional, and I broke down on the radio since the wound was very fresh, losing my beloved Fontaine. I was out of commission for weeks later and isolated myself from the world. Eventually, the vet board filed my complaints, but didn't do anything to help combat the carelessness that the vet took and the lack of anything that the vet did at the SPCA. My dog was gone. My dog was dead, and nothing was done against these bitches that should have been striped from their practice. I vowed I would never get another dog again because I didn't want to go through that loss ever again. I told Angela, and she felt bad and told others concerned in my camp. Was the worst feeling losing my best friend like that. Kevin and I spoke on the matter at the radio station. Very heartfelt and emotional loss for me.